So I'm gonna start by drawing out 16.5 inches, and I'm going to use these handy lines that I have on my ruler to help me measure out. So I've got 2 marks along there, so I'm going to be able to draw my 14-inch mark from the bottom right across. And now I want to figure out the 16.5 inches. There's my first 16.5 inches, and I just want another point, and then I can connect all the dots. Now that that's done, I just want to use my base pattern that I drew originally to make sure that that is the correct measurement, and it looks spot on. Now I'm going to cut this one out, and then I'm going to figure out what designs I want on it and also how many, because I've only got 3 colored fabrics to work with. And if you're wondering what's going on, I've been thinking about making color work tote bags for quite a while, and I made this design very recently, which has triangular shapes all over it. I've really been enjoying recently getting into some bag design, so this is a simple design, but something that is really pleasing because of all of the smooth, the straight cut lines and all of the colors that you can combine. I've just really been enjoying designing these tote bags recently. So now that my base is cut, I do know that I want my rectangle to be lying straight up. So the shorter edge at the bottom and the longer edges on the side. I also know that I do want to make rectangles or squares, and I'm gonna roughly cut it slightly. I don't know if I want to cut it off size or if I want to cut it right down the middle. I'm thinking actually right down the middle might be the best option. So half of 14 is 7, and again I'm going to be making 2 dots, one towards the top and one towards the bottom, and I'm just going to draw a straight line down to mark my center. This side I'm going to keep it all intact, and I'm going to put here color 1 so that I know that is going to be one solid color. Now for this side, I don't know how I want to divide it. I don't want to divide it right down the middle, because then when I box the bottom, this side is going to be a smaller color and that side is going to be a larger color. So maybe I want to bring it more towards the top, so 16.5 inches. Let's just say that I will do this one roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 6 inches down from the top is where I'm going to cut off for my first color. Okay, and I'm going to mark this area as color 2 and this area now as color 3. So I'm going to cut along these lines, but to put these back together, for them to have the same shape, I'm going to have to add seam allowance. So I'm going to be adding seam allowance here, and my seam allowance is going to be 1/2 inch just because that's what I've chosen for today. And I need to add seam allowance here and also seam allowance here. So I'm just going to chop these all up, and then I'm going to have to get a new piece of paper so I can add these seam allowances to it. Now these are all ready. I'm going to grab a new piece of paper and I'm going to stick these onto here just so that they stay secure while I draw around them. And I'm going to use some masking tape because it doesn't have that much stick. I can easily remove it to then separate the pieces again. To minimize how much work I'm going to do, I'm just going to align the edges at the bottom here so that those are straight, so it's one less line I have to do. And I'm not aligning it onto this one because I've cut a little bit there into the corner and I don't want my pattern piece to be cut. So I'm just going to tape one side down there, another side up here, and over here down to this side. So I'm going to redraw right around my rectangle. On this side I will just keep it flat without the seam allowance because I only need to add seam allowance on one side. And my seam allowance was 1/2 inch, so it's just the space I'm going to need to sew the pieces back together to have the same shape at the end. So just marking a line there for ease of visibility because I can't see the brown on brown. Now that's matched up there, and that is my 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm just gonna draw right up there, and my seam allowance is done. Now at the top, just gonna finish off my rectangle. Again, just drawing a bit of a line there so I can see the edge of the paper. And all my lines are connected. So now that when I remove my piece of paper from the top, this is going to be my new pattern piece for color 1. And I'm just going to add seam allowance included so I know for future reference that I've done it already. Now I'm going to do the exact same steps for the other 2 pattern pieces that I cut out. So just going to add seam allowance in 2 places. Oh, and I need to add down this side as well so that I can join it to this large rectangle. Forgot about this one. This is piece for color 3, and again I'm writing seam allowance included. Now for the last piece. And I'm just matching them all up like this because I'm trying to waste the least amount of paper that I can by using the other edges as the cut line. So in reality, I'm only gonna have to cut one side once for some of my shapes. So I need to add seam allowance on one end, so I'll just add it on this side because it doesn't really matter which side I'm adding it on because each side is actually mirrored. So my 1/2 inch on that side and now the last 1/2 inch on this side. Okay, and this is my last piece for color 2 and seam allowance is included. Now that this is done, I just need to cut out all of these pieces and then I can move on to cutting out the fabric. So these pieces do get irritating when they just all roll up like that. So I'm just going to put them all back together and actually roll them in the opposite direction to what they already curl in, just to get a bit of it out so that it lies flat. Okay, there we go. It's that easy to create your own color block tote bag. As long as you have a base design, you can cut it into whatever shape you want to. Just don't forget to add seam allowance where you've cut it.